All right, hello and welcome to our NACADA Annual Conference panel session and special edition of the Adventures in Advising podcast. My name is Matt Markin, and I get to host this session with none other than Dr. Melinda Anderson, Executive Director of NACADA. Melinda, you haven't hosted with me in a while. I've been sad. It's great to
I
have you back.
know. I've been missing you, Matt. I just love the way that we're able to engage and elicit these stories and people benefit from the experience. But I have missed seeing you.
Yes, and if you're watching the video, I got to make this. So we have Melinda Anderson's photo on here. And then we get to continue with this because we have a nice panel and we're going to introduce our guests. But before we do that, we can't go any further without thanking the NACADA Advisor Training and Development Community for selecting this as one of their sponsored sessions. So I think that's an amazing honor. So thank you so much.
Thanks,
And
guys.
yes, and this session is titled Lessons Learned. Advising Administrators Innovative Approaches to Managing Change. And on this panel, we have a spectacular panel of guests, and let's introduce them. So first up is Nicole Kent. So Nicole Kent is starting her 18th year in advising at Oregon State University. She holds a Master's of Education in College Student Services Administration from OSU with a focus on academic advising. She began her career as an academic advisor in OSU's College of Pharmacy, where she was awarded NACADA's New Advisor Certificate of Merit. Nicole next served the College of Engineering as Assistant Director of Undergraduate Programs, launching an academic resource center and coordinating peer academic coaching. For the last 8 years, Nicole has served as Manager of Advising and Academic Relations at OSU's College of Forestry. She leads a team of academic advisors who have achieved the highest level of student satisfaction with advising at OSU. Together, they serve students on 2 physical campuses and online. Since joining NACADA in 2003, Nicole has found professional development, support, and inspiration in NACADA. Her leadership roles include Chair of NACADA Region 8, Region Division Representative to the NACADA Council, Chair of the Finance Committee, and serving in the advising administration community. Nicole, welcome. How are you?
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. Very happy to be here.
Yes,
You're
we're happy
welcome.
for you to join us. And then up next, we have Kevin Thomas. And let me just find your bio, Kevin. So Kevin is Associate Vice President for Enrollment Management at the University of Central Arkansas. And I love the photo that Kevin submitted. Kevin previously served as a Director of Retention and Student Success at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, where he led efforts that resulted in an increased retention rate over that time of 10%. Prior to SIUE, Kevin served as the Director of Academic Advising and Retention Center at Western Kentucky University. At UCA, Kevin establishes the collective vision and direction of the offices within enrollment management, which includes the offices of academic advising, admissions and enrollment services, financial aid, the registrar's office, online, transfer, and returning student services, student athlete advising, and the Veterans Resource Center. Within NACADA, Kevin has served as the chair of the Advising Administration Community, the chair of the 2017 Annual Conference in St. Louis, an EOP mentor twice, served on the board of directors, and was selected as an outstanding advising administrator. Kevin earned his doctorate in educational leadership from Western Kentucky University and his master's and bachelor's degree from Murray State University. Kevin, welcome.
I am so glad to be back. I'm trying to figure out if I can mimic the photo. Trying to make sure that I'm representing appropriately, but I'm so glad to be back and spending time with you all.
Yes. So thank you so much, Nicole, Kevin. Matt and I have just been looking forward to being able to have this conversation with you. And so it's just amazing to hear all the work that you've done at your respective campuses, but then also in NACADA. And so I know that we're going to have a great conversation. So I will kick it off with our first question. And so, Nicole, we'll start with you and then go to Kevin. So if you could just help us understand a little bit about your path and your journey into higher education.
Sure. I actually started my educational journey in a music therapy program. I was going to save the world through music because that is a passion of mine. And so I did complete a bachelor's of music in music therapy. And that program involved a lot of psychology courses and working with kids in different levels of the K-12 system. So that was kind of my first exposure to working in education. I quickly realized that there were not full-time jobs with benefits for music therapists, and that probably wasn't a very sustainable career choice. So I ended up moving on to work with the Boys and Girls Club, which is an organization pretty well known across the U.S., a youth development organization really focused on access for all kids to youth development programming. And that's where I quickly decided I wanted to work with more grown-up youth. It's like maybe that college students would be more of an interest area for me. So I found Oregon State University's master's program for college student services. And gosh, you know those moments in your life when you stumble into something that is a perfect fit for you. That was truly my experience. And gosh, one of my first terms, I took a class on academic advising, which happened to be taught by Karen Sullivan Vance, who many in NACADA know and revere. And I had an aha moment in that class with Karen in 2002, where I realized that this was something that would be a great fit for my interests and hopefully some of my strengths. So that's what lit the advising fire. And so I started working as an academic advisor while I was still in graduate school. And lo and behold, when I finished that master's degree, there was a position open for me here at OSU. So I ended up staying at an institution I planned to be at for exactly 2 years. And that was 20 years ago. So that's how those things go. Very happy to have been here at Oregon State all these years in different levels of advising. And as Matt kind of mentioned in my bio, I've had the opportunity to serve as a frontline advisor, particularly working with students in healthcare professions, but also working in engineering, doing some more like advising administration and student success work. And then my current role here in OSU's College of Forestry is we have decentralized advising. So I oversee advising for my college. So I'm really kind of a mid-level manager, I think you could say, in terms of how advising administrators shake out around the association. So my perspective is kind of that middle place of really trying to support a team, still serving some students. I have a small group of students that I still advise, so I can try to stay relevant, but also trying to manage up and trying to affect change up the chain in an institution. Literally just this morning, we were talking about reviewing advising at our institution and how to get the right voices into that process.
Right.
So that's how I got here and where I am now.
No, thank you so much for sharing. And I loved hearing about how, you know, your introduction to academic advising came through your master's program, because when you kind of talk to people about, you know, their graduate level work and introductions into advising, sometimes they're not always in alignment. Shout out to Karen Sullivan Vance for those who know her. So she's currently working at the executive office, but I know that she was at OSU for a while. So Kevin, if you could please share with us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I'm glad to. It's hard to follow Nicole's path there, and you know, she's got so many things going on and such a depth of experience. I think about this question differently each time I would hear that, or somebody would ask, you know, how did you get where you are? And the thing that strikes me today is the very first time I went to a college campus was for my orientation. And I went to the college and sat down, picked out my classes. And this is when you'd go into a large conference room and schedule your classes. And I went in and I sat across from an advisor, and I had, I think, 15 or 16 hours scheduled there. And the advisor looked at me and said, sorry, like your ACT is what? And it was a 16. I had a 16 on the ACT the very first time I took it. Got partially admitted, and that was the start of my journey. He looked at the schedule and goes, "Oh, you can't handle the schedule. You need to go to a community college." And that was the reference that I received when I'm sitting across from him, and that was the start of my college journey. And so when you think about that process, it completely articulates the need for this association and our profession as a whole, because great advising equals great retention. And there are a lot of students, a lot of kids, especially at that 17, 18-year-old, when they would have heard that from a faculty member, would have said, "I'm out of here," and just moved on to different things. Probably in a somewhat unhealthy fashion, I put that on my shoulder as a chip, and really just owned that as motivation through the rest of my career to a point. I graduated 4 years decided that I wanted to do a master's in college student personnel, and did that, and started that path in housing before transitioning into the advising world. And I was fortunate in that move too, from the housing transition to advising. I remember in my interview, somebody asked me about my experience in advising. I said, "Oh, I don't know how to advise." And afterwards, my boss, a dear mentor to me, Dr. Ellen Bonaguro, comes up. She goes, "Never say that again." She goes, "You know how to advise. You just don't know the curriculum yet." And that really rang true for how I would treat my experience in advising, but also how I would hopefully develop other people around me, because advising is relational. Advising is so many things more than the curriculum. And so many of those skill sets are things that are happening throughout campus. But as advisors, we carry a mantle of the curriculum and the relationship and the connection and the outreach and the reaching out to students when they may be struggling. And we carry that mantle. Matt mentioned in the bio that my work a lot of times has been within retention, and it's work that I'm super proud of. But it's also work that I think is super individual in nature. I'm always humored by people who are like, "Well, what programs are you doing to improve retention?" And I said, "Well, it's this one called Caring for Students." And that is really the truth of it, right? You can do a whole lot of programs and throw a whole lot of money at things, but when it comes down to it, it is every student has their own journey. And if you don't find a way to know every student in some way, shape, or form, through an advisor, through a program, through whatever it may be, through an email, whatever it is from an outreach standpoint, you're not connecting with that student in the best possible way. And so I was fortunate to work in retention, overseeing for a couple campuses, and then presenting an advising session, the nuts and bolts of advising with fellow NACADA colleagues. I was at a conference and presenting, and after the session was over, my now boss comes up to me and says, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about a job." And so that's how I got to the University of Central Arkansas. I was presenting with colleagues from other institutions within the country, and she said, "I like what you're talking about." She goes, "What do you think about enrollment management?" And I said, "I work in academic advising." She goes, "Same thing." And I said, "You know what? You're probably right. It's very similar." And so I've been here for 3 years and absolutely love the job that I get to do, overseeing all the things that Matt mentioned, but really realizing how those things intertwine together, because so much of the world of advising is no longer in that narrow focus that we view advising, and is in a much broader look at a holistic approach to student success. And so that is my journey, with skipping some parts in there along the way, but that's pretty close for that question there, Melinda.
Well, no, thank you so much for sharing. And I always love stories and what people have experienced. So thank you for sharing that. What you encountered initially is what it is that you strive to not be with your students. And hilarious, okay, about it's called Caring for Students, because that you're absolutely spot on that in every aspect of the institution, senior level administrators are striving for. It's not about always standardizing a particular approach. It's at the end of the day of the outcomes focused on the way that we care about our students. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, and I do have to talk a little bit about Kevin and also Nicole, because they're splitting their time between doing this, but Kevin, as a previous annual conference chair, was very helpful. I mean, he reached out and said, "There's anything you need feedback on anything, suggestions, let me know." And he's been very helpful in that sense. And Nicole is also in her time because she's also one of our entertainment hospitality co-chairs for the conference. So a lot of great things that her and Winnie Tang have planned out. So just want to thank them both for that. And I forgot to mention in Nicole's bio that she also splits her time with choir and community theater. And the next project, I guess, is Sweeney Todd, which when I saw that, it made me think of Craig McGill, who I think wrote an article related with higher ed and Sweeney Todd with the music. So a lot of connections there.
It's true. He sent me 3 articles that he has written about Stephen Sondheim's Sweeney Todd. So talk about being multifaceted. That's what I love about the advising community. Everybody has these other areas of expertise that they can weave in.
Yes, absolutely. So let's jump into our next question. And Nicole, go back to you. In your current role, like what is your current role? And have you seen academic advising change since the pandemic?
How could anyone say no to that question? I can't imagine. My current role, my official title is Manager of Advising and Academic Relations here in our College of Forestry. My functional title is Head Advisor. So we have a team of student services folks here in our college. I oversee a group of 6 academic advisors. Serving our students. We have a required advising model. We see our students every quarter. And in fact, most of our students do 2 to 3 contacts with their advisor every quarter. So we're busy like everyone. And so, my primary work is administration of advising. And like I said earlier, I do a little bit of direct academic advising myself. I have a group of students who are here on campus, and I have a group of online students who are, all over the country. Some of them might be out of the country right now, for all I know, some of our military folks. So, my job is to, as I see it, is to support my team first. I think caring for students is an excellent retention strategy. And the way that I do that is keep the advising team running the best that we can, keep them resourced, keep them appreciated, and try to remove the barriers that they encounter to doing their work well. And I feel like that, by extension, is how I can then serve our students well. And what we have seen change these last almost 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, I think the biggest change that we've observed is the level of stress and worry and just mental health challenges that our students are now carrying. I think that's always been kind of part of being a college student, is a higher level of stress and managing your time and your finances, et cetera. But I think many of us, maybe most of us, experienced a lot more challenges to keeping, positive, keeping good mental health through the pandemic. And we're absolutely seeing that with our students as, their finances got tighter, their housing situations got more difficult, their social interactions all but dried up. So the work of advising has leaned so much more toward the work of counseling. And we are not licensed counselors on our team, but the care work that has been required has been significant. And we've talked a lot about the way that can deplete you as a care provider, if you will, as an advisor. So I would say that's the biggest change, and seeing how that's rippled out for the students. They're carrying these heavier loads in terms of just what they're experiencing and their stress. And that is not helping their academic performance in many cases. And if your academic performance starts to suffer, then the finances that you rely on sometimes dry up. And so what happens? You go and you work more. And now you're trying to balance more work with school, which again, doesn't typically lead to academic success or a balance in life that makes you a happier person. And it's just this awful cycle that we're seeing. I would say that's the biggest change.
Yeah, and just like you're saying, it's definitely like this cycle, and kind of like you were saying too. It's the students, but then also that also translates to like advisors, other staff on campus. Like it's just all across the board. How about you, Kevin, at UCA?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what Nicole said, especially on the student side, echoes true even to the students that we have here in Arkansas. And I say that just because, being from 2 different areas of the country, and especially being from the South, the pandemic wasn't taken as seriously as I think it was, especially in the Northwest part of the country. And so for us, we were very rarely gone from campus and then back in fairly full time. And I think that was a challenge for sure. Flexibility is come with things since the pandemic. Like I have advisors that are full-time working caseloads that are pretty fair balance in that 300 range, but we've offered flexibility in the job that there are a couple days a week that they're going to be remote. And those things have been really helpful, not only given everything with the pandemic, but given everything with the economic situation in the country and rising inflation and the things that really have been there. And then all of a sudden, some of the things that we can't do from a standpoint of increasing pay for our staff members have really been helpful in the fact that they have greater flexibility and freedom to do their job in ways that pre-pandemic I think would have been very difficult to do. And so you look at what we've really been able to accomplish. I think that, you know, when everything started to go remote, I was really concerned about how we would serve our students, and advisors on our campus, and from what I've heard, advisors throughout the globe stepped up in ways of support that shouldn't have shocked us, right? Like, we know the hearts of our advisors, like they do tremendous jobs. But I think the thing that also came from that is that we are able to serve students where they're at, and not necessarily have to be in the ways that we thought about advising pre-pandemic. And I think that there's a place for like an advising syllabus, right? I think that that's still a tool that's helpful, but I also think that in that tool, like you're telling the student how you would like to advise. And I don't know that that really applies as much as it does now, because I feel like so often now the students are telling us how they would like to be advised, where that would need to be at, how can I be best supported as a student in my journey. And that individual approach to our outreach to them within advising has become almost paramount to the conversation, because we have students that are often being advised virtually, and that's the way that we're connecting, and we have certain things like, hey, please turn on your camera, and those type of things, so that we can build the relationship. But there are things that have gone really well as far as our connection with students, as we've seen increases in retention and increases in student satisfaction when we survey students in the advising relationship. And that's just been a really nice aspect of the growth of the profession since the pandemic occurred.
I wonder if it would, oh, excuse me.
No, please, Nicole, go ahead.
I had another thought to offer on this, what has changed in advising. We were remote for a very long period of time. We were almost a year and a half fully remote. And when students began to come back to campus, we saw learning loss and atrophy of academic skills, and all the ways that has affected them in the classroom and in navigating the institution, and the sort of the bureaucracy that you also have to learn and understand. Mm-hmm. So I would just offer up another change in our work has been a lot more academic coaching, a lot more working with students to understand that you do have to go to class to participate and to learn. You know, a lot of people thought like, well, you know, it's recorded, I'll watch it later, or, you know, that became like an optional feeling for folks. So I think we'll have that bubble continuing to go through of whatever, like, learning didn't occur, or, you know, information that just wasn't well retained, or skills that were never really built in our students, and they're coming through with a different level of need for us to supplement that.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you for offering those thoughts. You know, one of our questions was talking about, you know, the innovations, right, that sometimes these experiences can bring. And so thank you, Kevin, for starting that conversation, and Nicole for adding to that, because I know that we've all hoped maybe 2 years ago that we would be able to say, pandemic, what pandemic? It's moved on. But, you know, what we're recognizing too is that it's still in continues in certain respects, and, you know, it's different based on how your institution's been resourced. But you're absolutely right about the needs of the students have changed. Kevin, you have a strong point about now students feel more comfortable in being able to articulate what they need. And so as you're thinking about some of the innovation or strategies that you've utilized, you know, for advisors to keep engagement with students, what are some of the challenges that you think that advisors still face, you know, as we are negotiating these new dynamics in higher education overall?
Well, I'm not sure we're all done being burned out, to be honest. I know so many people have experienced that compassion fatigue that came from these intense experiences, really trying to provide deep care and fill gaps for our students. And we have simultaneously been reinventing every process to deliver remotely, or to incorporate what we learned about remote delivery. So, you know, there's been a lot of extra work. Gosh, we're on our third season of orientation, and we have rebuilt done orientation the last 3 years, and we all keep looking at each other like we got to do it the same way twice because we're exhausted. So I think that the challenge we're all facing is how to heal from this collective trauma that we've experienced, how to continue bringing our very best to our students and to our colleagues, and how to reset our expectations for what this should look like. The level of work that many people had to do was above and beyond sort of your typical work week to get through the pandemic and to do what needed to be done to take care of everyone. And we can't sustain that forever. So I also think we're faced with this challenge of, it's a new landscape. Students now come to us for some new things, have new expectations of us. And we have to kind of reset the level that we can give to our work to do it well and keep a balance with the rest of our lives and not burn out extraordinary colleagues asking them to do too much.
Great points. Thank you, Nicole. Kevin, anything that you might want to add to what are some of the challenges that we're still facing?
So I for sure think the burnout part of that's there, and echoing what Nicole said, and even to maybe look at that in a different way is, and I don't know that advising jobs have ever been 8 to 4:30, 8 to 5 in nature, but as the jobs have gained more flexibility, advisors are now in positions where they're seeing students in different time frames. And so how are you balancing when you get the email at 6 or 7 o'clock at night and you feel like, well, this was kind of a work from home day, I'll go ahead and answer it. And so the separation is not necessarily there because the walls of our offices, the campuses that we reside on, that were such a key to that separation and that personal professional balance, have kind of changed the way that advisors are having to function. And I think that, and this moves to a conversation about administrators, like I think as administrators, that's one of those things that we often say is one of the toughest transitions from some frontline positions to being an administrator. That's like, how do we turn it off? And now all of our staff and all of the advisors are really facing something completely similar to that experience of joining the ranks of administration and not being able to turn it off. The other thing that I think is for sure there is a challenge is the fact that we're really in a global and national market. Advising remotely is incredibly possible. There was an institution this week that sent something out that said, virtual advising position, X dollars, that was roughly $10,000, $15,000 more than I pay my advisors. And it's like, that's quite a draw, and I can't compete in that market. And it's not universities only competing against each other, but it is businesses that are in the area that all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we can do work from home and you don't have to necessarily drive this far. And those jobs become very attractive to advisors that probably aren't being paid the way that we would like them all to be paid. And so that marketplace really opening up for some incredibly qualified advisors has put us in a place where we've seen the great resignation, and we're trying to keep staff. And so that has definitely been a challenge that we've been facing here. And when we've lost folks, we've lost advisors and we've lost staff, it has typically been to virtual or work from home experiences. And that's where we're seeing the greatest change and the greatest challenge probably.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, we even had an advisor that left to do a virtual advising position because it just made more sense for them, and with their lifestyle and their kids, that instead of commuting, they could do the same thing, but do it virtually and be remote. But yeah, as both of you said, like the burnout, it's real, and it's like you can't be deflated and rise at the same time. And it's something too where there's a communication workshop title called like "The Fish Isn't Sick, the Water is Dirty," and it's something where it's like we're needing to address how can we be more innovative and really collaborate and be a team. So I guess, have you seen any, whether it's at your institutions, what you've heard of, or even your suggestions in leadership positions of innovative practices that we could be doing to help ensure not only that we're having that student success, but also that we have that well-being and retention in mind of our academic advisors?
Well, it was an idea that we had kicked around in the advising community here at our institution, and we thought it was just a dream. And this morning, I was getting ready, thinking about the upcoming conference and reviewing the schedule of presentations. And lo and behold, somebody's talking about having made our dream come true on their campus. So I'll have to go to that session. But we wished for a pool of utility advisors, if you can call them that. I'm sure there's a better name for that. But especially as we're seeing so much transition, so much turnover, people leaving jobs, starting new jobs in advising, there's just gaps to fill. And it is very, very hard on those who remain when you're trying to cover a vacancy and get someone new trained up and keep everything rolling. So gosh, that idea of having some utility players trained up centrally on your campus that you could just deploy to the units that need them in that moment. Perhaps that you could then also utilize in orientation activities, in recruitment activities for more of these academic success and coaching conversations. Think of all the ways if we had a team of great generalists that we could just be filling gaps and keeping things going. So I cannot claim that that is an innovation we have made, but it's on my wish list.
Yeah, definitely. And Kevin, anything to add with that?
I mean, I don't think it's innovative anymore, but I think the one thing that stands out to me is that as an institution, if you're not offering flexibility within the workplace, I think you're going to struggle to keep folks satisfied in their working experience, and that those folks will think that their well-being is being considered. So I think the flexibility is for sure part of that. I also think that with advisors, that you're also talking about the challenges that are in front. It's a weird statement to say this, but I almost feel like one of the benefits of the transition that we've had is that during the pandemic as well, we were switching from a mixed model advising style on campus of primary role advisors and faculty advisors to just primary role. That transition has been occurring over the last 2 years. And I feel like because that's been happening over that period of time, it has also kind of it has allowed for innovation to occur in their roles changing and their relationships changing. And all of a sudden, the classes that they were advising for in business as first and second year advisors are now relationships that they're getting to have with faculty members that teach those courses and students that they're getting to see through all 4 years and not just through 1 year. I think that change has really been refreshing. And it seems like one of those things where I feel like it would be overwhelming. And I'm not saying that there weren't those moments, but I do think that has allowed for a new experience during a little bit of a chaotic time. And I think that it's been really healthy to have those changes occurring. And so this isn't saying switch your model around and that's going to solve all things, but it may be saying that keep things fresh. Make sure that you're providing new challenges and new opportunities for your staff and for advisors, and make sure that you're looking at things in a new way, whether that's professional development and training, doing it in a different way than you've ever done before, whether that's bringing people to your campus to talk about advising issues and things that are going on. I just think there's a lot of ways to look at things in a different pattern that can be innovative and also energizing to your team.
No, thank you both for your comments. You guys have probably heard the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. And so when you think about some of the, challenges that you've mentioned, and then how do we respond to that? How do we continue to be innovative? How do we continue to be creative and take advantage of what remains is what struck me when you both were talking, and capitalizing on those opportunities to, number one, let staff know that you're aware, right? I think sometimes people think, well, don't they understand what's going on? Like, oh no, we're aware, but what are the strategies that we can implement that can help serve and support while you're thinking about how your student success needs to remain, oriented to your mission? So I want to thank you both for sharing that information with the audience. And so when you think about, what advice, to advisors that you think would be useful for those who might, feel unsupported by their institution, and feel as students are seen as a number, what advice would you give, when you reflect on your experiences and what you've been able to provide to your institutions? What advice would you give to advisors who might be feeling some kind of way, or related to this idea that, do they see us? Do they value our work?
I will offer two thoughts. One maybe, I don't know, overly optimistic, and one practical. and probably people in the audience could pull what suits them best. But in terms of being optimistic, be optimistic. I always say, just keep my face toward the sunshine. Do not turn to the shadows, because there's so much that you can focus on in terms of what's hard, what's not going well, what barriers you might be facing. But if I keep my focus on the good that I can do and on the impact that I can have, who I'm helping, who I'm serving, that boosts me. And celebrating those wins, I think, really just helps internally, kind of managing your own feelings and the control you can have over how you recognize the value of your work. The practical matter, though, keep advocating. You make sure people understand what you're doing. And a great way to do that is to gather some data about the impact that you're having. The sweet people on our team here, I drive them crazy because I ask them to keep track of the advising contacts that they have, whether it's an office appointment or a phone call or a kind of advising related email, not a hey, hi email, but like something with some advising substance. And I know that that is a chore. But over the years, this means that we have a really powerful illustration of the amount of contact time that we have with students. And when it's time to say, how many advisors does it take to serve 1,200 students? I can easily justify that 6 is not enough, because we've got 15, 16, 17,000 advising contacts in 1 year. So if you can, kind of saving that data, saving testimonials from students who have been positively impacted by the advising experience, those kinds of things help you illustrate powerfully the work that you're doing to the leaders that you have to advocate to.
So if I can follow up, 100% everything that Nicole said, right? Because here's the thing, like, I fully believe that, when we're talking about our advisors and those steps that they can take, what she I was able to articulate is that the jobs that they're doing are so powerful and so critical and so important. But if I can just offer another side to that, is that we also get to this point where we become so loyal to a fault, and sometimes we don't realize it's also time to move on. And so, like, really quickly, when that question was asked, I thought very much about this quote that I saw today by the NBA basketball player Kobe Simmons, who I didn't know before today, and then I saw it come across. A bottle of water can be 50 cents at the supermarket, $2 at the gym, $3 at the movie, and $6 on a plane. Same water. Only thing that's changed was a value that was placed. So the next time you see, or you're not feeling your worth is nothing, maybe you're at the wrong place. And I see so many people that are so loyal to an institution to a fault. And sometimes all of the things that Nicole talked about care and what we're doing with the job and how powerful that you can be in your role and all of those things, just realize that you are also an incredibly powerful person, and your profession and where you're going and your career is important too. And if your institution isn't valuing you, then that's also one of those things that you need to take into account as well.
No, thank you for offering that. I love those two different perspectives, in terms of, what Nicole has done to kind of show up for her staff, Kevin, what you've done to show up for your staff. But then remembering at the end of the day, how are you valuing the way that you see yourself operating on your campus? And so thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So Let's maybe hear more personal from both of you in the sense of, I'm sure in your leadership type positions that you've learned some things. And, have there been any lessons that as an advising administrator, that you've learned about yourself or about the staff that you're supervising?
I had the opportunity to give a presentation with one of my favorite colleagues, Andrew Brewick from the University of Idaho, on this topic. I think we called it Adventures in Management. And it was really intended to address nobody teaches you to lead. No, there's very little training when you come into these types of positions, whether it's middle management like me or maybe even a more advanced institutional role like Kevin's. So what have I learned? My number one mantra that I have decided about my own leadership style is that I aspire to be an us, we leader. You have all probably heard, I hear people who are I, me leaders, and they talk about it's my team, it's my this, it's my that, I did this. And too easily, people with that style are taking credit for the work of others, or can very easily allow those on their teams to disappear into the I, me. And so I feel like the number one thing I always keep in front is we are a team. I talk about our team. This is what we are doing. And I just feel like it's an important way for me to set a tone that I'm in this with you and we are here together to do this work. And I'm not better than you because I have manager in my title. I would be up a creek in a hot second if any one of these people decided to walk away and stop bringing the excellence that they bring every day. So for me, it's being an us, we leader. That is my number one lesson about management, administration.
Oh, I love that viewpoint of it. Kevin, how about you?
I also embrace Nicole's "we not me" philosophy. That I'm a big fan of. The other thing too, and I remember hearing about this for year after year of talking to my supervisors and supervisors that I happen to work with. And they talked about the higher that you go up organizationally, the more removed you are from students. And so that's 100% true, right? You have to really work to engage yourself with students. And so I think one of the lessons that I've learned are the things that are motivational to me as an administrator often come from the successes of the academic advisors that I get to work with. That their successes are often things that I am celebrating just as much as something that I think I would have celebrated that was just something that I feel like I did in an advising appointment before. And that you have to realize that you maybe have a smaller part of the journey of the individual interaction, but if you're doing your job as an administrator well, that you're setting your team up for greater success in the overall scheme of the work that they're doing. And it's a different way to have to look at your motivations within the profession, because I think we all get into this to impact students. And so that has been the greatest transition, the greatest lesson is that if I am doing my job well, I allow for other advisors to have the greatest amount of success that they can have in their experience. So many institutions move to test optional on the admission standpoint. And the question then comes up, well, what does that mean for placement? And so it's like, well, okay, when we're having those meetings about placement, what makes sense for advisors, and making sure that we're going into those meetings, having conversations with advisors on how it will impact. Because from the admission standpoint, it's like, great, we're removing a barrier, and a barrier that needed to be removed anyway. But from the advising standpoint, did that test score really help you in placement into a biology course? And do you see things from that? And if you do, what are the alternates that are there? It's really embracing those advisors as a bigger part of the solution, and not just that we're all dealing with a problem.
Right. Absolutely. The us, we, not me, and the idea of expanding the impact of the work that we do to support our students is really critical when you think about how we're embracing and shifting that culture. So thank you both. I don't know about you, Matt, but I'm really engaged in this conversation. I don't know. I mean, many of you might not be aware of how fantastic Nicole and Kevin are, but just kind of hearing your responses to these questions, it's just it's undeniable. So, just shifting a little bit, when we start thinking about professional development, and what should it look like in an institutional lens, what are your thoughts about that, especially as we started talking a little bit about advisor well-being? What are some recommendations that you would have?
And in response to the question about working as an administrator effectively, the other thing I want to just say is build a great network of people who do similar work, of people who can mentor you. And so I guess I would offer that forward as an answer to professional development. I think we need to really make sure that there are opportunities for advisors to get out of their offices, whether it's physically or virtually, and gather and collaborate and learn from one another. Obviously, NACADA is an incredible venue for that. I would also say on our institution, on our campuses, that needs to be happening. And so something very simple, OSU has a monthly advisor coffee talk series. And someone in the provost's office pays for coffee. Thank you very much to the provost's office. And they arrange different guest speakers to come in for an hour. We get together, we have coffee, we hear updates about what's going on in different units around campus. Simple, free, easy. Those kinds of things are really important. Just small ways that we can quickly and easily get professional development going for folks. And then that helps you build momentum toward bigger investments like training, more robust training programs, like support for professional association involvement and that type of thing. So I think the mentorship, the networking, and just simple ways people can get involved are really key. The other thing I would say is I'm seeing energy around career ladders for academic advisors, which I think is really exciting. It's in many ways kind of a one-level position on a lot of campuses, and I think there's room for so much more for advisor 1, advisor 2, lead advisor, head advisor, advising administrator, whatever that might be. So I'm happy to see that happening in our profession so people can continue to build on their successes and advance themselves without having to leave the field to advance.
And Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'll say I feel like, at least on our own campus, this is an area of continued growth, but probably renewed focus. I feel like the last couple of years it's been treading water and not swimming forward. And I really feel like our ability to swim forward now is going to allow for more professional development to occur and more purposeful professional development to occur. So we're talking about similar things, maybe not coffee, but lunch and learn series, bringing in speakers to campus a couple times a year because we're not able to all travel to conferences that are out there and available for our own development. And so how are we able to tap into the resources that are there for our team? The other thing that I think that is really, this is an interesting way to look at professional development, but one of the things that I think is interestingly came from the pandemic is that prior to the pandemic, the individual appointment was where you would evaluate the advisor themselves. And so their growth and development came from an interesting interaction where you would maybe watch an advising appointment as a supervisor and they would see how things go, but it was really kind of felt foreign that there were 3 people in a room. And so our ability to ask and receive permission from students in advance of virtual appointments to say, hey, is it okay if we record this appointment because I'm being asked to do so by my supervisor, or this is part of my evaluation process, and getting actual feedback so that as a professional that you can become a stronger advisor and receive feedback on an actual appointment has been really, really powerful. Because so often we looked at evaluations and it's like, well, why did this person receive this score? Well, they did this, this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, but how are they doing in the advising appointment? Well, I was only able to observe a couple this year. And now it's more than a couple, and we're actually looking at the advising that's occurring in the advising appointment so that we can help grow and develop stronger advisors on our campus. And I think that's been one of those things that's like, you don't look at the evaluation process as a professional development tool, but we for sure have seen that can and will continue to be a good way to do that on our campus to make our advisors stronger in the areas that they can grow within the conversation and within their work with students, and also knowing the resources that are available for appropriate referrals in those appointments. It's been kind of a surprising turn of events.
Yeah, and such great advice. already I think people listening to this can be getting feedback, swimming forward. And then Nicole, what you were saying about there's such, quick and easy ways to get that professional development, but also we're gathering and collaborating, which hopefully people are doing at the NACADA conference in Portland anyway, which is fantastic. And I know we can talk for hours on this, but with time, and we also have 2 other panelists that we will be interviewing as well. But Kevin and Nicole, like Melinda said, it's great to have you here to answer these questions, giving such great advice. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Thanks for the invitation. And I just can't show enough appreciation for the work you're all doing and all the listeners out there too.
And anytime I can hang out with these 3, and especially it's been a while since Nicole and I got to connect. So I'm ecstatic for a little time to just talk about advising and all the wonderful things going on.
Well, wonderful. Nicole and Kevin, as always, it's so good to see you. And Matt, as always, so good to be able to work with you.
Yeah, same here. 100% agree.